Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Pen and Scroll Playthrough. My name is Kevin Thompson, and I'm the designer at Pen and Scroll Games. On PSP number 1 today, we're going to be taking a look at the game King's Court. King's Court was first published in 1983 by Janjohn Games, and even after almost 40 years, it has a bit of a cult following. The basic game plays very much like Uno. You're playing cards out of your hand, trying to get rid of all your cards, matching colors and or numbers. There are wild cards, but that's about where the similarities end. King's Court has many other kinds of cards that Uno does not, give the game a lot of variety and excitement, and well, we'll just see what all it has in it as we play through King's Court. Alright, so this is an original copy of King's Court. Obviously the box had all the contents in it. The game came with cards, which we'll see in a minute, and an instruction manual, rules, and finally some score pads. I think there was even a deluxe edition that had a card holder. Never seen one, but it was said to exist. So we're going to walk through the cards first and just talk about the basics of how to play. So again, as I said earlier, it's very much like Uno. There is a card sitting out on the discard pile, and on your turn you need to either match the color or match the number. That's the basic play. Okay, so I could play burgundy 6 on the blue 6 and change the color, and the play would go to the next player. I can play the same color. Okay. Those are the very basics. Now, just like Uno, there is a skip card in each color. There is, and if it's a 2-player game, you just get to take another turn. There is a reverse card in each color, which I believe in a 2-player game acts as a skip. And now we start deviating a bit from the classic Uno mechanisms. So the first card I want to put out here is a drawbridge. Now I'm not playing, I can't play a drawbridge on a green on a yellow. I'm just showing the cards. So a drawbridge. So the next player, after I play the drawbridge, the next player has to do one of two things. If he does not have another drawbridge, he has to draw 2 cards. Now there is a protector and a royal decree that you can protect yourself with, but setting those aside for the moment, there's 2 options. You either draw 2, or if you have another drawbridge, you play that drawbridge, and then play would go to the next player. So if I play a drawbridge, and the person after me plays a drawbridge, then the next player has to play a drawbridge, or they have to draw 4, so the drawbridges accumulate as they're played. And when it finally lands on someone that cannot play a drawbridge and cannot protect themselves, then they have to draw the sum of all the drawbridges that have been played. So that's how a drawbridge works. You can obviously change color. If you're the person coming after and you have a drawbridge, it can be a different color, just like if you were playing on the same number, you can play a drawbridge on a drawbridge of a different color. Another different card for King's Court is something called a Fair Maiden. It's a very unique card. When you play a Fair Maiden, you must play a proper escort with that card. So you get to play another card. So what is a proper escort? Well, it can be something simple, like another blue number card. That is a perfectly valid escort. Okay. Beyond that, I think pretty much any scroll card, so these cards have a scroll on them, any scroll card can be played as a proper escort. So we'll see all these in a minute, we'll go through in more detail, but things like a duke, a king, those can be escorts. Even a queen's option can be an escort. Wizards, dragons, I guess even a dungeon, even though that gets kind of played onto another player, It's a scroll card. I believe it can be a proper escort. Now the protection cards cannot because they have special uses. Okay, so that's how you play a fair maiden. Now you can play multiple fair maidens before you finally play an escort for all of them. I can play a blue and then a green and then a gold fair maiden, and as long as I follow with something to go with the gold fair maiden, I'm good to go. So that's how a fair maiden works. Queen's option. So this is a pseudo wild card in a sense. It allows you, well, it has several instructions. So the first thing you get to do has to be played on either blue or burgundy. And when you play it, you then get to choose. Do you want to keep it the same color, blue or burgundy, or do you want to change it to the other one? That's your first option. Second thing is you can choose the direction or skip. So you can let play continue to the next player like normal, or you can choose to have it act like a reverse, and then suddenly the direction changes. You can even choose it to be a skip. So it's kind of some extra effects on there, but its basic purpose is to switch between blue and burgundy if necessary. Same thing for this other Queen's option, it's just for green and gold. Now we come to the wild cards. Like Uno, there are some basic wild cards. These basic wild cards in King's Court, they don't make you draw, so we'll get to those, the drawing ones, in a minute. Okay, a Duke allows you to change the color and then play passes to the next player. A King lets you change the color, but you can also play an extra card, so you basically, most of the time, you're choosing the color by playing another card. And that could be something like a fair maiden that then needs an escort, so you can play 3 cards, all in one turn. And then come the drawing cards, wild cards. So this is a wild. It acts very much like a Duke. The only thing you can really do is choose the color. But this one makes the next player draw 3 cards and lose their turn. And I should have said earlier, the person who has to draw on a drawbridge then loses their turn and play passes to the next player. It's generally true anytime you have to draw. And then there's a wizard. This is more like a king. Well, actually, it's even better than a king. So not only do you get to play an extra card like a king, but you get to choose the direction, so you could reverse it. You can also skip, and then the next player that's chosen. So if play is going normally and it's going clockwise, and you play this, then the person clockwise from you has to draw 5. If you choose to reverse it, the player counterclockwise has to draw 5. If you choose to skip, then it goes past one player and the second player beyond you has to draw 5. So you get to, in a 4-player game especially, you get to choose who you want to have this card effect. And again, like I said, you can play an extra card with it, like a king, and the person that gets affected has to draw 5 cards and lose their turn. The dungeon is a bit different. When a dungeon is initially played, it's not placed on the discard pile, it's placed on the next player. That player is then going to draw a card and lose a turn, and then when play returns around to them, again, they will draw another card and lose another turn. At that point, the dungeon is over and it gets put in the bottom of the discard pile or something. Okay, so it's basically a draw 2, lose 2 turns type of card. And all of these, again, act like wilds. You can play a Duke on anything, you can play a King on anything, you can play a Dragon on anything. Doesn't matter what the color is, you can play a Wizard on anything, you can play a Dungeon on the next person no matter what's showing on the discard pile. Well, there's so much drawing going on, there needs to be some way to protect yourself. And so there are actually 2 protection cards in King's Court. The first one is a void. So if a draw card is played on you, even if it's a chain of drawbridges, okay, it voids whatever draw you are being told to do. And so if there were 3 drawbridges played, it would void all 3 drawbridges. And you would basically pick those drawbridges up off the pile and put them on the bottom of the deck and play returns to whatever it was before those drawbridges. It's like it never happened. And so that's the protector. Okay. There's also a royal decree. This reverses the draw card back onto the last player who played a draw card on you. Usually it's the player right before you. Okay. And so they, must draw however many cards and be affected by whatever's going on. Now the catch with these is you can't just play them. Like the drawback to these cards is if it's the last card in your hand, you can't play it. You have to wait for someone to attack you. Someone has to make you draw before you can play these. So you can get trapped with them and not be able to go out. But they're good nonetheless. And then there is the very flexible Magician card. Play as any scroll card you choose. So if we flip back through here, a Magician can be a Royal Decree, a Protector, a Dungeon, a Wizard, a Dragon, a King, a Duke, a Queen's Option, a Fair Maiden, a Drawbridge, a Knight, a Skip. You know, a Magician can be almost anything but a number card. Now it's worth 50 points. You don't want to get caught with it. But nevertheless, it's a very nice card. And the last type of card in King's Court is called a Magic Potion. This card has two uses. If you get down to one card, this is your last card, and it becomes your turn, you just play it onto the discard pile, and then you win the round. That's the default use of the Magic Potion. But if someone else goes out and you lose the round, this will dissolve any scroll card points in your hand. So if I'm holding something like this, when someone goes out, these points don't count. All the scroll cards go away, and I would only have 16 points counted towards me. So that's the nice thing about the Magic Potion. Now, the Magician can be a Magic Potion. It can be any scroll card, so it can be a Magic Potion. The catch is you still get counted with the 50 points. So if you play this as your last card and you play it as a Magic Potion, or let me rephrase that. If someone goes out and you're holding this in your hand, along with these other things, okay, you can make this Magician into a Magic Potion, and that will dissolve all of these scroll card points, but you still get hit with the 50 plus. So it can help, but the Magician isn't obviously as nice as having the real Magic Potion. So those are the basic cards in the game. And so what we can do now is go through a short round. I guess you never know how short. Sometimes they go longer. We can go through a round and see some of these cards in action. See how things work. Like I said, this is an original deck from the 1980s. Still in pretty good shape. All right. So for each deal in King's Court, the dealer is allowed to try to deal the exact number of cards necessary for the round. And so if there were 4 players, you're dealing 7 cards per player. If you can pick up off the top of the deck exactly 28 or 29 cards, you're allowed to have the initial card for the discard pile. Okay? Then you get a bonus. You get to either add 50 points to someone else's score or subtract 50 points from your own score. So I'm only doing 2 people. Let's see if I can get this right. Probably not. We'll see. I was 1 off. Okay, that's all right. So, just like most normal card games, you set up a draw pile, discard pile. We'll see what we have here. All right. So this first player 1 is going to play a drawbridge. Well, unfortunately, player 2 does not have a drawbridge, nor does he have anything to protect himself. So he has to draw 2 cards and lose his turn. I've gotten off the table a bit here. And so the player that played it gets to, it's only a two-player game, so he loses his turn. Player 1 gets to go again. He plays a yellow 10. No yellows for player 2, but he has a 10, so he can change the color to burgundy. All right. Player 1 says, that's great, I've got another drawbridge. Well, player 2 again is out of luck. No drawbridge, so he loses his turn. So back to player 1, his last burgundy. And here we go. So playing points, the other player's starting to get low. So fair maiden, 20 points. And we'll just go with something straightforward like a 9. Okay, player 1 can't play, draws and passes. Player 2, okay, he can change to green, player 1 did, because he did not have an 8 initially. All right, player 2, he cannot play a green 8, so he's going to actually go ahead and use the dungeon card. So like I said, this doesn't go onto the discard pile yet. It gets put over here onto player 1. And so he must draw a card and lose a turn. Okay. Now, player 2 is still stuck. He can't play. So he's going to play, knowing he's going to get to play again in a second, he's going to play that Duke, and he's going to choose blue, wanting to get rid of the skip card. Now, this is the second turn for the dungeon for player 1. So he draws a card, and then the dungeon goes away. All right, player 2 had chosen blue. He's going to skip player 1 and then play a 3. Well, player 1 says, well, that's great. I have yet another drawbridge, which player 2 must draw 2 and lose his turn. Okay, and then player 1 plays again. Player 2, player 1, player 2, player 1. And now player 2 is stuck. So he draws, plays like a skip, still can't play, tries again, and he must pass. Okay, player 1 can't play, so he passes. Pass, pass. Player 2, I believe. He's going to play burgundy. King may play extra cards, so there he goes. All right, player 1, player 2, player 1, player 2, pass. Now, just like in Uno, when you get down to one card, you have to alert the other players. In King's Court, you say on guard. So player 2 says on guard. Player 1 can't play, still can't play, must pass, and then player 2 goes out. So there you have it, the very basic play of King's Court. Now, one thing I should mention, there are some odd cards that can come up on a deal. So let's say you've dealt, and the first card on the discard pile is a king. The basic way to view this is the initial card on the discard pile is treated as if the dealer played the card. So, if there's extra things that allow a player to do when they play the card, the dealer gets to do those things. So if a king comes up, the dealer gets to immediately play an extra card, any card he wants. And most things will make sense. You know, the drawbridge is like the dealer played a drawbridge. So the next player has to either play a drawbridge or draw 2 cards or protect themselves. Or they can even reverse it back on the dealer, okay? If a fair maiden comes up, the dealer is allowed to attempt to play an escort. Now, if he doesn't have an escort, he has to draw a card. And if he doesn't get one, then we just give up and play goes to the next player. But normally there needs to be an escort played, if possible. Okay, what else could happen? I mean, a dragon could be played, so the next person has to draw 3 and lose their turn. The ones that get strange are if a protector comes up, if the magician comes up. Sorry, not the magician. Wrong blue card. Sorry about that. So if a protection card comes up, well, that doesn't give a way to start the game. I mean, what color is it? And so, something like that, we tend to reshuffle those back in and pick a different card. So the Royal Decrees and the Protectors, and even the Magic Potion. It doesn't really make sense for the Magic Potion to be the initial card. It's over here on the discard pile. So there are a few cases where, when the first card comes up, it's probably best to just shuffle it back into the deck and pick the next card. I believe that's most of the rules that I wanted to go through for the game. And so there you have it, King's Court, the cult classic game from the 1980s.